layers of volcanic ash that have concealed its secrets for nearly 2 millennia, Pompeii continues to reveal fragments of the past to us, one remarkable discovery at a time.
In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the old Roman city of Pompeii, preserved in volcanic ash for centuries.
In this ancient Roman city where time stood still on that fateful day in 79 AD, archaeologists have recently uncovered something extraordinary.
One more story this half hour to Pompeii. Latest discoveries: large, almost life-size paintings known as frescoes, 50 rooms in the ancient Roman cities.
A previously unknown ceremonial chamber hidden within the walls of an opulent Roman home. The room, adorned with vivid frescoes and filled with ritual objects, offers us a new window into the lives, beliefs, and practices of those who walked these streets long ago. What treasures did this chamber hold? What stories might it tell us about the people who once gathered within its walls? As we dust off the ashes of history, let's step into this newly discovered space and uncover the mysteries it has kept hidden for so long. To truly appreciate the significance of this remarkable discovery, we must first revisit the catastrophic event that both destroyed and preserved this ancient city. The story begins on what seemed like an ordinary summer day along the Bay of Naples in 79 AD. Residents of Pompeii went about their daily lives, merchants trading in the forum, children playing in the streets, wealthy citizens lounging in their gardens, unaware that the mountain looming nearby was about to change their world forever. Mount Vesuvius, which had been dormant for so long that locals considered it just another feature of the landscape, began to stir. According to the account of Pliny the Younger, who witnessed the eruption from across the bay, a strange cloud resembling a pine tree rose from the mountain around midday. This pine tree was actually a massive column of volcanic debris, ash and gases shooting upward into the atmosphere. For nearly 18 hours, Vesuvius rained down pumice stones on Pompeii, accumulating at a rate of about 6 inches per hour. Many residents fled during this initial phase, but those who sought shelter within buildings soon found themselves trapped. As the eruption intensified, the mountain released deadly pyroclastic flows, superheated clouds of gas and volcanic matter moving at hurricane speeds that engulfed the city in minutes. These flows killed anyone remaining in their path instantly, their bodies eventually decomposing to leave hollow spaces in the hardened ash. What makes Pompeii unique among ancient ruins is precisely the manner of its destruction. The volcanic ash and pumice that buried the city up to 20 feet deep created a time capsule, preserving buildings, artifacts, and even human remains in remarkable detail. Streets, homes, and public buildings maintained their structure. Everyday items like loaves of bread, fruits, and furniture remained intact. Even delicate wall paintings retained their vibrant colors, untouched by the elements that would have eroded them over time in any other archaeological site. For 17 centuries, Pompeii remained lost to the world, though occasional discoveries of ancient artifacts occurred when locals dug wells or foundations. The city as a whole lay forgotten until 1748, when a Spanish engineer named Roque Joaquín de Alcubierre began systematic excavations. Since then, about 2/3 of the 170-acre city has been uncovered, revealing invaluable insights into everyday Roman life during the early Empire period. The Regio 5, the excavation project. The discovery of our hidden chamber didn't happen by accident. It was part of a meticulously planned archaeological initiative known as the Regio 5 excavation project, one of the most ambitious excavation efforts at Pompeii in over half a century. Launched in 2018 as part of the Great Pompeii Project, this excavation focused on a previously unexplored northern section of the ancient city, an area of about 22 hectares that had remained largely untouched by archaeologists. The Great Pompeii Project itself began in 2012 with $105 million in funding from the European Union, the Italian government, and UNESCO. After decades of neglect had led to collapsing structures and deteriorating artifacts across the archaeological park, this initiative aimed not only to uncover new areas but also to stabilize and preserve what had already been excavated. Modern technology and conservation techniques would be employed to avoid the mistakes of earlier excavations, where exposure to the elements had damaged many priceless findings. The decision to focus on Regio Fiv wasn't arbitrary. Preliminary surveys using ground-penetrating radar had indicated intriguing structures beneath the volcanic layers, and archaeologists had long suspected that this area contained high-status residences based on its proximity to other wealthy neighborhoods. What's more, this region had been partially damaged during World War II bombing, creating a unique opportunity to access deeper layers without disturbing intact surface structures. The project assembled an interdisciplinary team of over 60 specialists: archaeologists, conservators, architects, engineers, geologists, anthropologists, and digital imaging experts from universities and research institutions across Italy and beyond. Every aspect of the excavation would be documented using cutting-edge technology. Drones captured daily aerial footage, 3D scanners recorded the precise position of each artifact, and specialized software created virtual models of structures before they were fully excavated. Under the direction of Dr. Massimo Ossana, the archaeological park's director, the team employed a methodical approach, moving inward from the Via di Nola, one of Pompeii's main thoroughfares. They worked slowly and deliberately, removing volcanic deposits layer by layer while carefully documenting each stratum. This painstaking process allowed them to record not just what was found, but exactly how the eruption had affected different areas of the city. As the excavation progressed, remarkable discoveries emerged: a street of grand houses with intact balconies, a thermopolium, food stand with vivid frescoes, and food remains still in vessels. And tragically, several groups of human remains huddled together in their final moments. Each finding added new dimensions to our understanding of Pompeian society and the eruption's timeline. Discovery of the ceremonial room. The morning of March 14, 2021 began like any other day at the excavation site. The archaeological team arrived before dawn, hoping to take advantage of the cool morning hours before the Mediterranean sun made work unbearable. They were focused on clearing a section adjacent to what had already been identified as the House of the Enchanted Garden, wealthy residence previously partially excavated in the 1910s but never fully explored. The team had been removing volcanic deposits from what appeared to be a service corridor when site supervisor Dr. Elena Martelli noticed something peculiar. Unlike the typical doorframes they'd encountered throughout Pompeii, which were usually open or collapsed inward from the force of volcanic debris, this particular doorway was deliberately sealed with a different type of mortar than the surrounding walls. The difference in material suggested the seal wasn't part of the original construction, but rather a later modification. "Stop everything," Dr. Martelli called out to her colleagues. "Let's bring in the structural team before we proceed." After ensuring the surrounding walls were properly supported to prevent collapse, a constant concern in Pompeii excavations, the team carefully began removing the mortar seal. As they created a small opening, they used specialized endoscopic cameras to peer inside before proceeding further. What they saw left them speechless. A completely intact room, untouched by looters or previous excavators, with vibrantly colored walls visible in the camera's light. Over the next 3 days, the team methodically widened the entrance while documenting every stage of the process. What emerged was a chamber measuring approximately 4.5 by 5 meters with a ceiling height of nearly 3 meters, unusually spacious for a private room in a Roman home. The chamber was located in the inner section of the domus, accessible only through a series of 3 antechambers, suggesting it was a space reserved for intimate gatherings rather than public reception. Most striking was the fact that the room appeared to have been deliberately sealed before the eruption. This wasn't uncommon in Pompeii. Residents often sealed off rooms during renovations or repurposing, but it meant that whatever lay inside had been preserved not just from the eruption, but from the activities of the household in its final days. The room was in essence a time capsule within a time capsule. The location of the chamber within the house provided important context. It sat adjacent to the peristyle garden, but wasn't directly accessible from it, unusual for a high-status room in a Roman domus. Instead, it could only be reached through a sequence of smaller rooms that archaeologists identified as likely private family spaces rather than areas for receiving guests. This positioning suggested the chamber served some specialized purpose beyond everyday household activities. As the team fully exposed the entrance and prepared for the delicate process of entering the space, they implemented strict protocols to prevent contamination. Air quality was monitored to protect both the artifacts and the researchers. Specialized lighting was installed to minimize heat damage to pigments. A customized platform was constructed to allow access without touching the original floor. When Dr. Osana, the project director, finally stepped into the chamber for the first official inspection, he knew immediately they had discovered something extraordinary. "This isn't just another room," he reported into his recorder. "We're looking at a purposefully designed ritual space preserved in a condition we've never seen before at Pompeii, the House of the Enchanted Garden." To fully appreciate the significance of our ceremonial chamber, we need to understand the unique context of the residence where it was discovered. The House of the Enchanted Garden, or Domus del Giardino Incantato as it's known in Italian, represents one of Pompeii's more intriguing elite residences, a home that has long fascinated archaeologists but remained incompletely documented until the recent excavation project. First partially uncovered in the early 20th century, the house derives its poetic name from the elaborate garden discovered in its central peristyle courtyard. Unlike the formal symmetrical gardens typical of wealthy Roman homes, this one featured unusually naturalistic plantings arranged to create the illusion of a wild, enchanted grove. When archaeologists analyzed the root cavities and pollen samples from the garden, they discovered exotic plants that would have been rare imports in first-century Italy, evidence of the owner's wealth and cosmopolitan tastes. The house itself occupies nearly 800 square meters of prime real estate in Pompeii's desirable northern section, close to the city walls but also convenient to the forum and commercial districts. Its location on the corner of two streets allowed for an impressive facade with multiple entrances, including a grand main doorway, ostium, decorated with marble thresholds and intricate mosaic flooring that announced the residence status to all who entered. Architectural evidence suggests the domus underwent significant renovations in the decade before the eruption. What had once been several separate properties appears to have been combined into a single grand residence, with older walls removed and spaces reconfigured to create a flowing layout typical of high-status Roman homes of the Neronian and early Flavian periods, roughly 54-79 AD. This renovation likely coincided with the city's recovery from a major earthquake that had damaged much of Pompeii in 62 AD. The identity of the home's owner remains a subject of debate among scholars. A signet ring found in an earlier excavation bears the name Marcus Lucretius Fronto, possibly connecting the home to a prominent local family mentioned in various inscriptions around the city. More recently, a wax tablet recovered from the house's tablinum office contains business records relating to the wool trade, suggesting the owner may have been among Pompeii's wealthy textile merchants. What makes the House of the Enchanted Garden particularly significant in Pompeian studies is its unusual combination of spaces dedicated to both public reception and intensely private activities. While most elite Roman homes followed a standard pattern, public areas near the entrance giving way to increasingly private family spaces toward the rear. This domus features multiple semi-private reception areas scattered throughout its layout, along with several secluded rooms accessible only through complex routes. The discovery of our ceremonial chamber adds another layer to this already complex picture. Hidden away in a section of the house that even guests permitted into the inner areas would rarely access, the room represents one of the most private spaces in a home already designed for graduated privacy. Its existence raises fascinating questions about the distinction between public religion and private ritual practices in Roman domestic life. Stunning wall frescoes. As archaeologists fully illuminated the ceremonial chamber for the first time in nearly 2 millennia, they were met with an explosion of color and imagery that literally took their breath away. The wall frescoes that wrapped around all 4 sides of the room represented some of the most sophisticated paintings ever discovered in a Pompeian private residence, rivaling even the famous Villa of the Mysteries in their quality and complexity. These weren't your typical Roman domestic decorations. While most homes in Pompeii featured the so-called 4 styles of Roman wall painting, ranging from simple marble imitations to elaborate architectural fantasies, the frescoes in this chamber defied standard categorization. They combined elements of the established decorative traditions with unique iconography rarely seen in domestic settings. The north wall facing the entrance presented the most striking image, a life-size depiction of a procession featuring 12 figures approaching a central seated woman. The seated figure portrayed slightly larger than the others and with a subtle luminous quality achieved through masterful use of white highlights, wore flowing robes of deep blue and held what appeared to be a golden scepter or wand. Most scholars have tentatively identified her as Proserpina, the Roman equivalent of Persephone, goddess of the underworld and springtime renewal. The processing figures included both men and women of various ages, each carrying different symbolic objects: grain sheaves, pomegranates, a small caged bird, what appeared to be a scroll case, and various vessels. Most remarkably, their faces were rendered with unusual individuality for Roman fresco work, suggesting they might represent actual family members rather than generic ritual participants. The east and west walls continued the narrative theme, but with more enigmatic imagery. The east wall depicted a garden scene unlike any other found in Pompeii. Not the orderly paradise gardens typically shown in Roman art, but a wild, almost primeval landscape populated with unusual flora and small, fantastical creatures hiding among the foliage. Botanists examining the images have identified several plants associated with magical properties in Roman pharmacology, including hellebore, mandrake, and a particularly accurate rendering of the poisonous yet medicinal aconite plant. The west wall presented an equally mysterious tableau, a nocturnal scene showing what appears to be a cave or grotto entrance, with starry sky visible above and a silver crescent moon. A small altar with burning offerings stood before the cave, attended by two draped figures whose faces were deliberately left in shadow. Above the cave entrance, painted constellations were arranged in a specific pattern that astronomers have determined would have been visible in the night sky over Pompeii in early spring of 55 AD, possibly indicating when the room was painted or commemorating a significant date for the family. The south wall, containing the sealed doorway through which the archaeologists entered, featured simpler decorative patterns forming a frame around the door, but with one fascinating detail: a small painted figure of Mercury, messenger of the gods and conductor of souls to the underworld, positioned directly above the lintel as if guarding the entrance. The ceiling, partially collapsed but reconstructible from fallen fragments, had been painted a deep celestial blue and adorned with gold leaf stars arranged in recognizable constellations. At the center was a circular medallion depicting what appears to be a female face surrounded by rays or perhaps serpents, possibly representing Medusa, though lacking her typically fearsome expression. The technical quality of the paintings was exceptional. Analysis of the pigments revealed expensive imported materials, including genuine Egyptian blue, cinnabar red, and even traces of the extremely precious purple derived from murex shells. The artist, or more likely a team of artists, employed sophisticated techniques like aerial perspective and trompe-l'oeil effects that created the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality. Most impressively, certain figures seemed to change their appearance slightly when viewed from different positions in the room, a sophisticated visual trick that would have created a sense of animation in lamplight, ritual objects, and artifacts. While the wall paintings immediately captured everyone's attention, the floor of the ceremonial chamber held treasures of equal significance. Unlike excavations of rooms damaged by the eruption, where objects are often found scattered or crushed, this sealed chamber preserved its contents in their original positions, offering a rare glimpse into how the space was actually used before being sealed. Dominating the center of the room was a circular marble table supported by 3 legs carved in the form of lion's paws. The tabletop, measuring approximately 1 meter in diameter, featured an inlaid design using various colored marbles to create a labyrinthine spiral pattern converging on a central rosette. Surrounding this table were 3 low couches, clini, arranged in a U shape, the typical triclinium arrangement used for Roman dining, but smaller than standard dining couches and upholstered with fabric that had largely disintegrated, leaving only traces of purple-dyed threads and gold embroidery. Upon the table rested an assemblage of objects, clearly arranged with deliberate purpose. At the center stood a bronze tripod supporting a shallow silver bowl. Residue analysis of the bowl revealed traces of burned aromatic substances, frankincense, myrrh, and an unidentified plant material that botanists are still working to identify. Surrounding this central element were several smaller vessels, 2 miniature ceramic jugs decorated with relief scenes of dancing maenads, a fluted glass bowl containing desiccated fruit seeds, identified as pomegranate and fig, and most intriguingly, a set of 9 small bone discs engraved with symbols that don't correspond to any known Roman game or divination system. Near the table's edge lay a remarkable find, a small silver box with an intricate relief showing Bacchic scenes. When carefully opened by conservators, it revealed a collection of 21 tiny scrolls made of exceptionally thin gold foil, each measuring roughly 3 tentillion by 5 simti. 18 remained tightly rolled and too fragile to unwind without risking damage, but 3 were found partially unrolled. The visible text, written in minuscule Greek letters, appears to contain ritual formulas and invocations to various deities, including some unusual syncretistic combinations of Greek, Roman, and what may be Egyptian divine names. Against the north wall stood a small wooden cabinet, its structure largely deteriorated but its bronze fittings and decorative ivory inlays intact. Inside, archaeologists discovered an astonishing collection, a set of miniature bronze figures representing deities including Mercury, Bacchus, Venus, and several Egyptian gods including Isis and Anubis. Several polished stone spheres of various minerals, bundles of dried herbs tied with colored threads, and a particularly significant find, a carved ivory wand or rod with a handle shaped like a pine cone and shaft engraved with spiral text that preliminary analysis suggests is written in a cryptic alphabet possibly derived from Etruscan. Perhaps the most puzzling artifacts were found in a small niche cut into the east wall, concealed behind a pivoting terracotta panel painted to match the surrounding fresco. This hidden compartment contained 3 identical ceramic vessels, each sealed with wax and bearing an identical stamped impression showing a figure with raised arms flanked by stars. When CT scanned to prevent damage from opening, these vessels were found to contain some kind of liquid that had partially solidified over time. Chemical analysis is ongoing, but preliminary results indicate the presence of wine, honey, and trace amounts of a compound similar to alkaloids found in certain psychoactive plants. The floor itself yielded evidence of activities conducted in the room. In several locations, particularly near the table, the mosaic flooring showed distinctive wear patterns, consistent with repeated movement in specific ritual patterns. More tellingly, embedded between mosaic tesserae were microscopic fragments of gold leaf cinnabar powder and organic materials that had fallen during whatever ceremonies took place there, providing tangible evidence of the actual rituals once performed in this sacred space. Evidence of daily Roman life. Beyond its ceremonial function, our hidden chamber offers surprising insights into everyday life in first-century Pompeii. The room may have been dedicated to ritual purposes, but it still existed within a living household, and the evidence suggests this wasn't a space used only on rare occasions, but incorporated into the rhythm of regular family life. One of the most telling discoveries came from the room's northwestern corner, where archaeologists found a small wooden chest containing writing implements, reed pens, a bronze inkwell still containing dried ink residue, and several wax tablets. The tablets, when carefully examined using multispectral imaging to reveal impressions in the wax, contained what appears to be a household inventory and ritual calendar. The text lists dates throughout the year corresponding to both public Roman festivals and what seem to be private family observances, including birth anniversaries and what may be commemorations of deceased relatives. This discovery challenges our previous understanding of the separation between public religion and private practice in Roman households. Rather than compartmentalizing their religious observances, this family appears to have integrated them into their administrative record-keeping, suggesting a more fluid boundary between the sacred and the mundane than scholars previously believed. The room also contained evidence of children's presence, surprising in what we might expect to be an adults-only ritual space. Tucked beneath one of the couches, archaeologists discovered a small cloth bag containing knuckle bones astrogally used in children's games but also in divination practices. Several of these bones had been painted with the dots and symbols, and one had been wrapped with gold wire, suggesting they served dual purposes as both toys and ritual tools. Were children being trained in family religious practices? The evidence suggests they might have been active participants rather than excluded from these private ceremonies. Food remains provided another window into daily life. Analysis of residues from the vessels found in the room identified traces of standard Roman cuisine: olive oil, garum, fermented fish sauce, wine, and wheat, alongside more exotic ingredients including imported spices like black pepper from India and cinnamon from Asia. This suggests the room witnessed not just abstract rituals but actual consumption of food and drink, blending nutritional and ceremonial functions in a way typical of Roman religious practice, but rarely preserved in such detail. The inclusion of Egyptian deities among the figurines speaks to Pompeii's connected position in the Mediterranean world. By the 1st century AD, Egyptian cults, particularly that of Isis, had become popular throughout the Roman Empire. The presence of these figures in a private home shows how individuals adopted and adapted foreign religious elements, creating personalized practices that went beyond state-sanctioned religion. Perhaps most revealing about daily life are the traces of textile work found in the room. Several bone sewing needles, small weights that would have been used on a loom, and a spindle whorl suggest fiber processing and textile creation occurred in this ostensibly sacred space. This fits with what we know about Roman women's traditional activities occurring alongside their religious responsibilities, with spinning and weaving often having ritual significance beyond their practical purposes. The room also offers evidence of literacy among multiple household members. The varying handwriting styles visible on the wax tablets indicate at least 3 different individuals made entries in the household records. In a society where literacy rates among women are often assumed to have been low, this suggests female family members may have been actively involved in both household management and religious record-keeping. Advanced archaeological techniques. The exceptional preservation of our ceremonial chamber presented both unprecedented opportunities and unique challenges that required the most sophisticated techniques in modern archaeology. From the moment of discovery, the excavation team implemented cutting-edge methodologies that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations of Pompeii researchers. The first priority was non-invasive documentation before any physical intervention occurred. Using specialized LiDAR, light detection and ranging equipment, technicians created a millimeter-accurate 3-dimensional model of the chamber and its contents. This digital twin preserved the exact spatial relationships between all artifacts, relationships that would inevitably be disrupted during excavation and conservation. The LiDAR data was supplemented with gigapixel photography, capturing images so detailed that even microscopic paint flecks and tool marks on artifacts would be recorded. Environmental monitoring began immediately. Sensors were installed to track temperature, humidity, light levels, and air composition within the chamber, establishing baseline conditions that conservators would later recreate in laboratory settings. This data proved crucial when pigments on the frescoes began showing subtle changes after exposure to modern air, allowing conservators to quickly adjust conditions to prevent further degradation. For the first time in Pompeii's excavation history, a complete microbiological survey was conducted before general access to the space. Samples from surfaces throughout the room were cultured to identify potentially harmful microorganisms that might have evolved in isolation over nearly 2 millennia. This precaution proved well-founded when several unique fungal species were identified, including one that appeared to have developed a specialized relationship with the pigments in the wall paintings. The excavation itself proceeded with unprecedented precision. Rather than the traditional archaeological approach of removing layers of material, technicians employed methods borrowed from forensic science and microsurgery. Each artifact was documented in situ using photogrammetry before being carefully extracted, with surrounding material sampled and preserved for future analysis. Even the apparently empty space beneath objects was captured using silicone casting techniques that preserved impressions of deteriorated organic materials. DNA analysis, a technique unavailable to earlier generations of archaeologists, yielded remarkable results. Genetic material recovered from personal items like the bone hairpins and the mirror handle is being compared to DNA extracted from human remains found elsewhere in the house, potentially allowing researchers to identify precisely which family members used the ceremonial space and how they might have been related to one another. Perhaps the most impressive technological application was the multispectral imaging of the wall paintings. Using cameras sensitive to wavelengths beyond visible light, from ultraviolet through infrared, technicians revealed hidden details in the frescoes, including preparatory sketches beneath the final paint layers and changes the artist made during creation. This technique also uncovered text written in now invisible organic inks on some of the painted figures' garments, texts that appear to be names or ritual designations that would have been visible only to initiates who knew to look for them. For the mysterious sealed vessels, researchers employed medical CT scanning technology rather than opening these fragile containers. The resulting three-dimensional images revealed not only their contents but also the manufacturing techniques used to create them, including fingerprints of the potter preserved in the clay, fingerprints that match those found on other ceramics throughout the house, suggesting they were made specifically for the family rather than purchased. The gold leaf fragments found in the floor mosaic presented a particular analytical challenge. Using laser ablation mass spectrometry, a technique that removes microscopic amounts of material for analysis, researchers determined the exact composition of the gold, identifying trace elements that point to mines in northern Spain as the probable source, information that helps reconstruct trade networks and economic connections in the Roman world. Mysteries and unanswered questions. Despite all our advanced technology and careful analysis, the ceremonial chamber continues to guard many of its secrets. For every question answered, new mysteries emerge, puzzles that challenge our understanding of Roman private religion and social practices. Perhaps the most fundamental mystery remains the exact nature of the rituals performed in this space. While the physical evidence clearly indicates some form of ceremony involving incense burning, libations, and possibly communal consumption of food and drink, the specific religious tradition is difficult to categorize within known Roman practices. The iconography combines elements of the Bacchic mysteries, the cult of Proserpina, Egyptian religious motifs, and possibly older Italic traditions in a syncretic mixture that doesn't neatly fit any documented ancient cult. The deliberately sealed doorway presents another enigma. Why was this room so carefully closed off before the eruption? The quality of the mortarwork suggests this wasn't a hasty job done as Vesuvius began rumbling, but a deliberate action taken some time before the disaster. Several theories have emerged. Was the room sealed after the death of a family member who had served as the primary ritual practitioner? Was there concern about the increasingly suspicious attitude of imperial authorities toward private mystery cults following crackdowns under earlier emperors? Or was the sealing itself part of some longer-term ritual cycle, perhaps with the intention to reopen the chamber on a specific future date? The gold foil scrolls remain among the most tantalizing unsolved puzzles. The three partially unrolled examples contain text that combines Greek magical formulas with what appear to be personal names and dates, suggesting some form of initiation record or protective charm. But without examining the remaining 18 scrolls, a process that would likely destroy these fragile artifacts, we can only speculate about their complete contents. New imaging technologies are being developed specifically to read these scrolls without unrolling them. But progress is slow and painstaking. The bone discs with their unusual symbols have defied interpretation by specialists in ancient games, divination tools, and writing systems. The symbols don't correspond to known alphabets or numerical systems of the period. Most intriguingly, when the discs are arranged in certain patterns, the symbols seem to form connected sequences, suggesting they served some communicative function rather than merely decorative or game-related purposes. Were they teaching tools, components of a divination system unique to this family? Without written instructions or parallels from other sites, their true purpose remains elusive. The liquid contents of the sealed vessels present another ongoing mystery. While chemical analysis has identified some components, including wine and honey, other compounds in the mixture don't match known substances from the Roman pharmacopoeia. Microscopic plant material suspended in the liquid includes pollen from several plants native to North Africa and the eastern Mediterranean, plants not otherwise documented in Italy during this period. How did the family obtain these exotic substances, and what purpose did the carefully preserved mixture serve? Perhaps most puzzling is the relationship between this private ceremonial space and public religion. The family clearly participated in conventional Roman religious practices, evidenced by household shrines to traditional deities found elsewhere in the home, while simultaneously maintaining this private space dedicated to what appears to be a mystery cult with initiatory aspects. Did they see a contradiction between these practices? Was this room's syncretistic worship an addition to mainstream religion or an alternative to it? The absence of contemporary written explanations leaves us guessing about the psychological and theological frameworks that allowed these potentially disparate systems to coexist. The crude fertility figure found near the doorway raises questions about the longevity of religious traditions within Italian families. Stylistically, it resembles Neolithic figurines found in the region, predating Roman civilization by thousands of years. Was this an actual ancient artifact passed down through generations, or a contemporary creation deliberately archaized to invoke ancestral traditions? Either possibility suggests a complex relationship with religious history that goes beyond the documented practices of state religion. Implications for our understanding of Roman society. This remarkable chamber, hidden for nearly 2 millennia, doesn't just add another interesting footnote to our knowledge of Pompeii, it fundamentally challenges several long-standing assumptions about Roman society and private religious practices during the early imperial period. First and foremost, the discovery transforms our understanding of religious diversity in the Roman world. Traditional scholarly narratives emphasize the public, communal nature of Roman religion, with household worship generally limited to simple offerings at the family lararium shrine. The elaborate nature of this private ritual space, with its specialized equipment, enigmatic texts, and syncretistic imagery, reveals a far more complex religious landscape where families could develop highly personalized forms of worship that went well beyond state-sanctioned practices. The chamber also forces us to reconsider gender roles in Roman religious activities. The presence of traditionally feminine implements like spindles and sewing needles alongside ritual objects suggests that women played central roles in whatever ceremonies occurred in this space. This contradicts older scholarly assumptions that relegated women to peripheral positions in most religious contexts beyond a few specific female-centered cults. The evidence here points toward family-based religious traditions where women may have served as primary practitioners or even leaders, a pattern hinted at in some ancient texts but rarely documented archaeologically with such clarity. Our understanding of social class and its relationship to religious sophistication must also be re-evaluated. The intellectual complexity evident in the room's contents, from the astronomical accuracy of the ceiling decoration to the multilingual texts of the gold scrolls, indicates that this family possessed considerable education and cultural knowledge, yet they weren't among Rome's highest elite. Other evidence from the house connects them to commerce rather than senatorial or equestrian status. This suggests that philosophically complex religious practices extended further down the social hierarchy than previously thought, challenging notions that sophisticated mystery cults were primarily the domain of the highest classes.